I think it's about the issue of let her be all-knowing, as in like the pastor.
All-knowing.
Yes,
Okay. Yeah.
yes. I have my field of education, and then sometimes they want me to be like the pastor, knowing all the fields around, and they will not really talk to me about my expertise. You understand?
Oh,
and
okay, sure.
And then some perspective that is very wrong is when people think that pastor's wives are uneducated, and then they feel like they are dirty, they are not sociable. I can see my sisters here, my beautiful sisters, and they are smiling and everything. So they are not just like that. We are human beings. So we have our aspect too. We are sociable people, we interact with people, and we are educated.
Hey, I want to welcome you all to the Nigerian Pastors Podcast. My name is Segun Aiyegbusi. I'm your host and sore throat manager, so just ignore my voice. If you're listening on audio, I apologize for my voice. We're battling some things, but it's going to be good. So usually during this podcast, right after my voice, you would hear Pastor Joshua Sati, who is my co-host. But today we're doing something super different. We actually have a panel in the house today, and so it's going to be a fun episode. Today's episode is titled Pastors' Wives Tell All. And so we've actually invited some close friends. And so I'm going to go around the room and introduce you to some special people. First, starting with my beautiful wife, Modupe Aiyegbusi. Welcome.
Thank you.
Glad you are here, honey. We're talking today.
Okay.
Oh, man, it's on. Then next, we actually have my pastor and his lovely wife, Pastor Solomon Guruza, and his wife, Tabitha. Welcome.
Thank you.
Glad you guys could be here.
We're glad to be here.
Love Reverend Guruza and his wife. They've been real ministers to my family, and they have tons of ministry experience, and so it's glad to have you guys here.
Amen.
And then, of course, can't forget the bishop. We've given you the title bishop.
Yeah.
And so our co-host, Bishop Joshua Sati, and his beautiful wife, Fubure, they're here. Thank you for joining us.
Always glad to be here.
Great to be here.
Outstanding. So like I said, in today's episode, usually you would hear Pastor Joshua and I talk about emotional health of a pastor and why pastors need to really build in balance into their lives. Well, today, our focus is, and I think we promised this, Joshua, at like episode 1 or 2. And so we're saving it the best for the last. And so this episode, we're going to focus our attention on the often unspoken life experiences of pastors' wives. Usually in churches, we focus a lot on the pastor and my pastor and what my pastor is doing. And we don't often think about the impact that ministry has on the pastor's wife. So we have pastors' wives today who are going to be sharing their heart with us. So gentlemen, we're not going to be talking much. We're going to be demonstrating the art of listening.
Perfect.
And so we'll have some input and I'll ask some questions as we go along. But so let me leverage our time together. So ladies, I want to start off with this simple question. Did you come into ministry knowing your husband was going to be a pastor? Or did you get married and find out later, oh man, I've signed up for this for life? So how many of you came into ministry knowing he was going to be a pastor?
Yeah.
You sort of? All right, so you knew he was going to be a pastor. Yeah. Did you know he was going to?
Yes, in a way.
Okay, so explain. So it sounds like, well, my wife obviously knew I was going to be a pastor. In fact, I think that's why she was attracted to me. Or not. So you knew, but it seems like you didn't think he was going to be like a regular church pastor. Is that what this is? Okay.
Yes,
what did you think? Let's start with you, Fubure.
Okay.
What did you think he was going to be?
Our plan was to work with youth, and he was at a passion to teach. So we thought we would end up at the school system, or he would end up in the youth ministry. So that was where we were heading to.
Okay, so you ended up being church pastor. What about you, Tabitha?
Yeah, actually, I was hoping he's going to be just a missionary. Let's be traveling around and preaching the gospel, reaching out to people. So.
In some sense, you are, because you are at a church that sends people.
Yeah, we send people, but I want to be like.
You want to be out there more. Okay. We'll come back to that, okay? Honey, what about you?
I knew you were going to be a pastor. I knew you were a pastor already.
But you didn't know we were going to end up in Nigeria as missionaries.
Yeah, I didn't know we're gonna be missionaries.
Fortunately, she supported me when I made that decision. So we'll come back to that. I asked that question because in our training, because we do training not only for pastors, but we also do for pastors' wives. We've encountered pastors' wives who some resentment that they've expressed came from the fact that they have this mentality of, I did not sign up for this. When I married my husband, we were going to be selling clothes, Weary. But, God called him. And so I asked, so this is good. We all came to this expecting it. All right, let me go with this question then. Is another low ball question, soft question. So this is for the ladies. If you could switch roles with your husband for 1 week, in his role as a pastor, what's one of the first things you would do? If you could switch roles with your husband. Fubre looks like she's ready to go already. All right. What would you do? What is the first things you would do?
Wow. It's kind of a tough question
It is
because
a tough question.
I felt I wouldn't switch anything really.
Okay.
Yes, because I felt for him, it was easy for him to be a pastor. I think it was really a calling for him.
Okay.
He's more of a people person than I am.
Sure.
I had to learn that from him.
Interesting.
Yes. I had to learn that to be a people person.
Since you brought that up, let me ask this. Not the question. I'll come back to you guys later. But your husband's a people person. You're not. Did you find when you came into ministry that people expected you to be that? Why is she not more lively?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I had to definitely try to be a people person when you're out of that, your own comfort system.
Sure.
So,
Okay.
So for him, it was, I think I had to learn a lot when it came to being a pastor from him.
Yeah.
And to be able to get into the role itself.
Okay.
So I think I wouldn't really change anything because for him, it came as not just a passion, it was a calling.
Okay.
He was a people person.
Yeah.
So it flew.
Okay.
Yes, for him, I think I would be more kind of a strict, maybe if I could be a Catholic priest.
More kind of a strict. Okay.
Yeah, but for the church we found ourselves in, I think I wouldn't change
You wouldn't
anything.
change it. Okay, fair enough. Tabitha, what would you change?
Encouraging.
The first thing I would change is after Sunday service, people trooping into the office, I'll just say, please, can you book appointments so I can have a good rest? Because him waking up from like 6 till maybe in the afternoon, late in the afternoon, 2 or 3 is tedious. So if I would change it, I would just like, let's book appointments. Not good for Sundays.
I think that's so interesting because you're right. Like as a pastor, Sunday after service is probably one of the most tiring moments because you've been there since.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you were there at 6, which means you probably woke up at 4, getting ready, getting yourself. And so after service, people want to talk deep stuff. And you're like, I do not have. I'm at 20% of my tank, right? So that's a good point. Okay, all right, honey, what would you change?
I think I would make Mondays compulsory rest days.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ooh,
So
that's good.
meaning
That's a good one. Yeah.
I would piggyback on what she said, have appointments, but make Mondays a compulsory rest day. So it's a compulsory Sabbath for pastors.
Which is funny because
You don't
Monday.
have my vote on that.
I was gonna say.
Because I know at a point he had Mondays as his rest days,
Yeah.
compulsory rest days for him. So it helped to rest from the Sunday.
Yeah.
Apparently I can.
It's interesting because most of us take off, like if we might take it off on a Thursday or midweek. When you're right, Monday actually makes more sense because you've just put all yourself out. So that's good. Okay. So one of the things that we talked about is the fact that from our seminars and our trainings, we've learned that because church folks put a lot of attention on the pastor's wife usually experiences one of two extremes. Okay. On the one hand, sometimes pastors' wives can sometimes be overlooked. Right, because you're like, oh, it's your husband we really want, right? Like there are times where people will just come, even as a couple, Sunday morning you're standing together, they'll just walk by you, oh, good morning, ma. And just like, oh, even, they might not even acknowledge you because really what they want is the pastor. And so on the one hand, pastors' wives can sometimes be overlooked and they end up experiencing a sense of isolation or loneliness. On the other extreme, people put unrealistic expectations on you and you end up facing criticism, right? So my question for you is this, ladies. I want to give you a chance to speak to this. What is the most unrealistic expectation that has ever been placed on you as a pastor's wife? Let me start with you because you're closest to me.
Oh.
So we were pastors at Grace Church in New Jersey for 15 years. So what was an unrealistic expectation? I have several in my mind, but I'm curious to know what yours
Really?
is. Yeah.
You see, I think with Grace Church, I was given a lot of grace in Grace Church. Like,
Not Sunday night though. You had some people who put some expectations on.
well, they expected me to be able to, know how to pray like the pastor or quote the Bible or preach. And I'm like, not really.
Yeah.
Or, be present for so many things.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think Grace Church in general was very gracious to me. Like,
Okay.
And pastors' wives in general at
Sure.
Grace Church. Yeah.
Sure.
They didn't
Okay.
expect too much of us.
Okay. So you would say for you, some unrealistic expectations, the expectation to pray, not just to pray, but to pray, to pray like Pastor Segun prays.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do pray weird, but, and also preach. I do. But the way I pray was very different. And then also to preach, right? There was an expectation that you were like, I didn't go to seminary for this. Like, okay. All right. Tabitha, what about you?
For me is greeting people after the service. They
Okay.
expect me to just like keep smiling, and then there's this weird feeling you keep having
face
because
is
you're
stuck.
tired, and then you have to just like keep laughing. Hi, how are you? And then sometimes you are giving attention to someone, and then others will feel like you are snubbing them. And it's because this is an older person, and so the younger ones will feel like, oh, she's like selecting the class of people and then they expect me to befriend everybody whether I like it or not. And then sometimes I just feel like being myself.
You know what struck me when you were talking that, because I mean, obviously I've sat, Pastor Guruza is my pastor, and there are some Sundays where you've preached and what you said hit me so hard that even after service, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about, as his wife, there are some things he taught that probably hit your heart and you're still trying to process it. But as soon as service is over, they expect, forget what you learned from Jesus. Right. And you're like, I'm still trying to process. Right. So so that's you. Okay. All right. So expectation that right after service. So part of why we're discussing these questions is not only for you ladies to share your experience, but we also want other pastors' wives who are listening to know that they're not alone, right? Because that's part of a goal here is to say, hey, listen, if you're going through this, if you feel like the church is putting unrealistic expectation on you, or you feel lonely, isolated, ladies, you're not alone, right? We have other godly women who love Jesus, who love the Lord, who love the church, who are going through the same. And sometimes you're right. After service, ladies, there's this unrealistic expectation that, oh yeah, lady, get your game on. Like, give me some more Jesus. Your husband just gave me some.
Ministry.
Give me some more too, right? So thank you for that. Fuber, what about you?
For us, I think we've worked in 4 different churches.
Okay.
So sometimes the expectations are different depending on the location and the kind of people that are there.
Yeah.
But I think one thing I always prayed to God about or laughed about, I think that was so unrealistic, was that people felt like I should know everything that's going on in everybody's lives, in everybody's families, and be able to respond to everybody at the same time. I'm like, I'm not God. I can't be omnipresent and omniscient at the same time. For me, that was one of the greatest expectations I had. They feel like, you never knew I lost my brother, or I was in the hospital, or I was sick, or I was this. I said, I can't know if you don't tell me. And there's sometimes my husband may know something, but generally doesn't mean I know what's going on, what's happening. So I think that was so unrealistic during
So they expect you not only to know everything that's going on, but they expect you to be
and everything.
I think this is helpful also for us, even as pastors, to keep in mind that, because as a pastor on Sunday morning, you're overwhelmed. And so we're not even thinking the fact that there's like 10 people around my wife who are lining up to talk to her because they were like, if he has anointing, well, then she probably has bonus of it too. So, okay. All right. Good.
Something hurts. In fact, many of you are experiencing pain and heartache in places in your life you may not even realize you were wounded. Let me share with you real quick 3 warning signs that you are in need of soul care like yesterday. Number 1, you may have a secret addiction that you've been turning to for help to relieve stress. Number 2, you constantly criticize yourself and cannot seem to shut off your internal negative self-talk. Number 3, you may have been having problem trusting people lately, or are becoming increasingly short-tempered with people close to you. Listen to me. You will keep repeating what you don't repair. And this can be problematic, especially if you are in a leadership role with spiritual influence over others because you will inevitably produce more of who you are. So we want to help you experience freedom from any unhealthy habits or any unhealthy thought patterns or any sinful behavior that has a strong hold over your life. So on May 1st to 3rd, 3 days, we are hosting our first ever online soul care seminar that we want to invite you to sign up for. This 3-day seminar is for ministry leaders, church leaders, youth leaders, and pretty much anyone who is responsible for the spiritual care and well-being of any group of people. So whether you're a parent, a pastor, or a community group leader. And during this seminar, we're going to guide you in exploring the root causes of your behaviors, addressing things like wounds, lies, vows that negatively impact your life. We'll also discuss things like father wounds and mother wounds and help you gain a better perspective on how your family of origin has shaped your life. Listen, it's time to break free and to start living your life from a place of freedom. So click on the link on the bio or in the caption and sign up for our Soul Care online seminar today.
Yeah, just to mention, I'm kind of curious. You know, sometimes members can have a misconception about pastors. They think of us as some superhuman beings, like Superman or Spider-Man with special superpowers.
Yes.
So I'm kind of wondering if, you know, sometimes you also feel like members are having some kind of misconceptions about you. What would it be?
Yeah, like what misconceptions? Yeah. That's actually what misconceptions. So this is general. What misconceptions do you think people have about a pastor's wife that you would like to help them better understand? Maybe that's So okay, we'll go, whoever wants to go ahead.
Well, I would say that, you know, pastors' wives are just human as every other person.
Really?
Well,
Super. You didn't get bonus Holy Spirit?
No. And, you know, many times what people don't understand is that they are carrying a whole lot of emotion, you know, that whether you know it or not, whether it's secondhand or not, I mean, they're dealing with the family, they're dealing with the pastor's emotions, you know, they're watching what's going on, what's going wrong, you know, so they carry a lot of stressors unbeknownst to every other person. And then you expect them to still measure up to your standards. They don't need to measure up to your standards. They are human.
Sure. Yeah, I've observed that people, because we were talking with some folks about this, and they were like, well, she knew what she was signing up. She's going to be a pastor's wife. I'm like, human. Like, right? I mean, we literally had people say that when we said, don't put on the pastor's wife the same expectation. Now, of course, unless they hired her, there's some denominations that hire husband and wife. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about you hired him, right? And so he's your pastor. She's not your pastor, right? And so her pride, you know, at our church, one of the things that our pastor used to say is that we hired you, not your wife. And so she's free to discover herself. So, but okay, so you would say they're human.
Plus, they don't pay her. I mean, and they expect her to work overtime. I'm just saying.
And opening up that one,
and probably she has some other work she does or something.
That's true. That's true. That's true. So, what would you say? What is a misconception people have about pastors' wives?
Well, I think it's about the issue of let her be all-knowing, as in like the pastor.
All-knowing.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I have my field of education. And then sometimes they want me to be like the pastor, knowing all the fields around, and they will not really talk to me about my expertise. You understand?
Oh,
and
okay, sure.
And then some perspective that is very wrong is when people think that pastor's wives are uneducated, and then they feel like they are dirty, they are not sociable. I can see my sisters here, my beautiful sisters, and they are smiling and everything. So they are not just like that. We are human beings. So we have our aspect too. We are sociable people, we interact with people, and we are educated. It's just that we are in our own selected fields of service.
So it's like you're often not known for who you are. They know you more as pastor's wife as opposed to Fuber, as opposed to Tabitha, as opposed to Modupe.
My identity is like they are misunderstanding my identity with title.
To your
pastor's
role.
wife, and then to my role as a pastor's wife, but not as a
So
person.
glad you had a chance to talk about it. So get it all out there. Okay.
Very true. If I could add like an experience I had, I think we went to a particular church and I noticed that I started learning Hausa like on the way in my lifetime, like as an adult, and I noticed that they would greet him, "Oh, good day, sir," and they come to me, I'm like, "Oh, Sanu." I couldn't even understand English, not trying to know maybe where you're coming from or your background, and didn't realize that I have my own dreams, my own expectations about what I want, my own ambitions in life. You know, that I also want to pursue, even with being his wife as a pastor.
Yeah.
I think sometimes they don't try to see that. They feel like my life and everything should just be around the church.
Yeah.
Anything out of the church is not. Sometimes I go to work, I go to places and people look at me and I greet them. "Oh, I know you." They were like, "Where?" I was like, "Your pastor's wife." They were like, "Oh, really?
You have a job? What is this?
You have a job, you work here." "Oh, I didn't recognize you because out of the church." So those are some of the things that we really, our identity can be lost at a point. They just know me as the pastor's wife and not as Reverend Sati. What do I do? What do I like? What are my own dreams? What are my expectations? What are my expertise? How can I even contribute or help with my expertise within the church setting? If I'm contributing anything, it should be biblical, theological.
Interesting, because what's interesting about, I think, with the three ladies sitting here, highly accomplished women in their own right. I mean, you know, with each of you guys, I know your backgrounds are highly accomplished in your own right. And so what I hear you saying is, we want our churches to know us for who we are, not for the role that they see us in. I love that. All right, guys, I promised you I would come at you a little bit. So here I am. So I want to ask the guys this question, right? So among your many roles as a husband, not as a pastor, but as a husband, among your many roles, provide for your wife, love her, care for her, all those things. One of your important roles as a husband is to protect your wife. And sometimes that protection is from our own congregations, right? Sometimes you got to protect your wife from, you know, sometimes wolves in sheep clothing. Sometimes you got to protect your wife from the sheep themselves, right? So the question is this: when you are having a rough season in ministry, a rough season in church, and you're dealing with some strong personalities. We all had those in our churches. There's some people who think they could do our job better than we can, or who have better idea, or who have ideas that they think we should implement, right? So how do you, when you're dealing with those people, how do you protect those people from, or rather, how do you protect your wife from experiencing the impact of some of the negative things that you guys experience in church? And there's two parts to that question. How do you protect them from the impact of what's happening in church? But also, how do you find balance in when you're going through a hard time? You don't want to dump everything on her. So what things do you share with your wife when you're struggling in church? What things do you be like, I need to protect her? How do you maintain that balance? Let's start with you, Reverend Guruza.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there's a particular book I came across at some point. It says, I think the title reads something like, is it Managing Horses or something like that?
Managing horses.
Yeah, where, you know, you have in the congregation some alpha males who want to always even step in front of the pastor and try to teach the pastor some skills of pastoral ministry.
Yeah.
Someone who is training it and they are not. There's this statement that Dupe used earlier with the Grace Church in the US. I think one clear thing I can say about the church I'm pastoring is that we enjoy a lot of grace there. We have well-accomplished academicians in the field of theology and even other disciplines.
Yeah.
But they have great respect for the pastor.
Yeah.
Not because I have bigger degrees than they have, but I think they've accepted God's hands upon their pastor.
That's so good.
And so there is that respect.
That's good.
I can hardly, in all the years I've been in that church, I can count if there was a time we had some, when it's issues about the ministry in the church, sharp disagreement. I don't think. Largely, it will be in homes where people have issues, and that is where challenges will come.
Sure.
Now, granted, sometimes there are very hard stuff that I encounter many times. Well, a few times, yes, I've had those moments.
Sure.
Now, there are two things that I do to protect my wife. One, the grace of God in my life has, He has made me and has given me some kind of personality. I don't allow issues to go to sleep. I must trash them with you before we move on. And you will never leave my presence until
we're
we
done
trash that
hashing it
issue.
out.
Yeah.
So
Nice.
that's one area.
Sure.
Once it is handled, when I speak about it with peace.
Okay, that's good.
But if it is something that comes and I've not been able to resolve it before getting home, I try to become calm before I can share with my wife. And when I share with her, I'm able to also have peace. Because I believe, and as I have seen in my wife, pastors' wives are equally called. Now, there is the way that sharing with her gives me peace because I receive encouragement from her. But I don't make the matter look too toxic in the sense that I am bringing persons in the issue. And now she's looking at persons and not issues. So I try to just present the issues, sometimes in a question form. I need help. So that she does not begin to look at individuals and then her better judgment is beclouded.
That's good.
So it's one way I protect her as well.
You said 2.
Yes. Yeah, so the first one is that I will stay and address the issue with the person.
Okay, right up front.
So already I'm speaking from the place of peace. The second one is to just focus on the issue. And not to bring persons inside of it.
I think there's a part that he forgot. The one that he will say, to get to my wife, you have to go through me.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Oh, that's good.
So he always protects me.
You said something I thought was interesting. And actually, Pastor Joshua and I were talking about this the other day, how, because one of the questions we always get is in our soul care training is, what things do you share with your wife? What things do you not? And one of the things that we landed on was, because I think early in ministry, there were some things I would go through in ministry and people would say and do things. And in my anger and venting, I would go home and just, I can't believe this. And I would share it with my wife. Well, the problem is that some of those situations, 1 or 2 of them, I went back to work and I resolved the issue with the guy. But I've already triggered an emotion in my wife and she has not had that chance to settle it yet. So now she's seeing the guy next Sunday, you know. And so one of the things that we talked about is, which I think you were mentioning, is that I share my processed thoughts with her as opposed to my unfiltered, unprocessed emotion. So I think that's what you were saying. Like it's not healthy to share the unprocessed, unfiltered emotion. But if we've worked through it to some extent and we can kind of present it in a healthy way, we protect names because you don't want your wife going to church every Sunday and she's sitting there like, that's that guy. You know, like that's not right. So thank you for that. That was so good. That was so good. Pastor Joshua.
I noticed there's something a little bit different about my experience with you guys. Like I've walked in different terrains. Like, and each one of them, like my wife mentioned earlier, you know, we have different experiences. So unlike you, we didn't find grace in in some of the places, and we did enjoy our stay in some others. So for me, first of all, my home, like there's this perception. Members believe that the pastor's house is their money. They want
even the food inside belongs to them.
Whatever's in the pot is ours also.
You know, they want to barge into the house and tell you, like, this is our money. Like, I have a friend who told me that somebody literally went and opened their deep freezer, that this is our money, you know. So for me, nobody dares to do that. So not that I'm not, receptive to visitors. But then you can't just come in and claim this is your house or this is my territory.
Healthy boundaries.
So I make sure that, look, you don't come into my house and begin to misbehave and think that you are in your territory. It's my territory. When you become the pastor of the church, then it's your territory.
You've been through some stuff, so you said. And I think that's important too. I think part of it is that you mentioned that you have been through. We've had different experiences, right? But you've been in some really, for lack of a better term, some toxic context. So it
very
requires
toxic.
Healthy boundaries. Right.
In fact, in one of the churches we've been, I literally refused to stay in the pastorium. You know, just to avoid any appearance of any, you know, because we've been wounded in the, previous, church. So I just felt, look, let me just deal with this one once and
this
for
one
all.
is mine. Okay.
So I moved my family somewhere else.
Okay.
Where I felt they are more secured and
Like it's a healthy distance.
very good, a healthy
You're
distance.
still part of it. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
which didn't all go well with the church, but I feel, look, my family comes first.
Yeah.
So whatever you think,
Sure.
I will protect my family first.
Yeah.
Because where we are being offered to stay, it's not secure. I don't feel it was comfortable and secured to keep my
So
family
you're
there.
talking about, so there was physical protection, but also
Physical
emotional,
protection,
there's
yes.
an emotional protection.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
No, that's awesome.
So so more like the physical. Now for the emotional protection, again, for me, some of the places we've been to, we've experienced some very, very toxic situations. In fact, such that I can't even hide it from my wife because it's all over.
Okay.
She gets to hear it from someone else, whether I say it or not.
Sure.
But one thing I try to do is not to show her how bad the thing has hurt me or is affecting me, because I know that's gonna get to her. Sure. So more like I have people that I go to when I need to tell them how bad the thing is affecting me. But then I tell her as much as she can take.
Sure.
All right.
So it's the idea of processed versus unprocessed thoughts.
Yeah.
Like you've processed.
Yes.
What you're
Even
sharing.
in fact, for my own case, sometimes even if I decide I don't want to share this with her, she gets to hear it. Like it's already there.
Yeah.
All
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So, but then the best way for me to approach that one is to show her that this thing has not really, it's not really taking a toll on me. I'm fine. Like I'm okay. Even if I'm not, just to protect her, But then I have, a couple of people that I really go to open up and tell them, hey, look, this is how bad this thing is.
Yeah.
There's this guy that I used to call like 2 a.m., 1 a.m., and he will just listen to me and we just keep talking when she's fast asleep, So these are some ways
that you do that.
I do that.
Yeah, we always talk about the fact that it's healthy for pastors to have some trusted friends, right? There needs to be someone you can call and talk to share deep heart, emotion, things that you might not be comfortable sharing elsewhere else. And then helping you process that. I want to come back to you, Reverend Guruza. You said something which was interesting, and I want you to flesh it out a little bit. You talked about the fact that the wife is also called. One of the beauty of this podcast is that even Pastor Joshua and Michael, we don't always agree on everything, and that's okay. We want to discuss it. So I hold to the opinion that the pastor is called. He's the one called to ministry. Now his wife, obviously being a part of that, is going to experience that also. But I hold to the view that God called the pastor. She's part of his life, and so hence she's part of that calling. But she's not the one called. You said the opposite. I would love for you to flesh that, and I because I think that even those listening, there are those who would agree with you and say, "Yeah, no, you're both called." All right, flesh that out for us.
So, aside the fact that I'm not talking about the office of the pastor.
Okay.
You could have people who have the giftings, males, females, pastoral gifts.
Yes.
Something interesting happened the early days we were together with my wife. I met a friend of hers, and so her prayer was, God, give me a missionary pastor as a husband, because she had the leading that God was calling her into that ministry as well. Not the office. And when we met, she'd had other pastors, other missionaries who would come to her, but she didn't have that conviction until I came along. And when I came, we clicked. And then I was a pastor missionary. So we served in that capacity for some years by planting churches in many rural areas together before. So when she would say earlier that she never saw us being like in a church situation, I never planned to be in a church situation myself.
It's kind of how the calling goes, isn't
exactly.
it?
So we were exactly where we thought God wanted us to until God directed us to serve in a church that is a mission. It's a missionary church. So invariably, we are not very far from exactly what we're supposed to be. So that conviction of being a pastor's wife, it's a calling in itself.
And I agree, and I think I appreciate you making the distinction between the office and the sense of calling. I think I agree. Like, and maybe that was actually helpful. You're right. Like, I think I was talking about the office, and you're just saying calling in general. Absolutely, I think I'm in agreement with that. Absolutely.
Thank you.
No, that's good. That's good.
So the question is, if you could go back in time and give your younger pastor's wife one piece of advice, all right?
Yeah, you go back when you first started, right? So think about not the missionary when you were actually in church, right? What would you tell that younger self? So this is ladies. What would you tell the earlier version of yourself?
Oh, okay. So I think I would say, you're enough. You don't have to live up to anybody's expectation.
Interesting.
You're enough in who you are, what you're doing as a mother, or in whatever capacity you find yourself. You're enough. You don't have to prove to anybody in any way,
I would say if you went back in time, also tell that to me, younger me too. I think all of us, find all of us and tell that to all of us back in time. That's good.
I would actually say to my younger self, Tabitha, be yourself. You're unique. So you have a unique purpose here on earth. So just be yourself. Don't fake your life, because if you want to be someone else, who will be you?
Yeah.
So I would encourage her to just keep being herself.
Yeah, that's so. Author Oscar Wilde said, you might as well be yourself because everybody else is taken.
Yeah.
I love that quote, right? Like, be yourself. I love that. That's so good.
For me, I think I would tell myself to enjoy every moment of it. Don't take the steps seriously, because the truth is that God is the one who leads.
Sure.
So enjoy every moment of it. Enjoy the process. Enjoy the journey.
Yeah.
So let me give you guys a chance, ladies, to shine your husband a little bit. And this feels a little self-serving, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
I like that.
What is one moment? How should I ask this? When you look back, what is one thing you're most proud of your spouse? And that sounds like such a self-serving question. So I'm asking the ladies. Well, so there's two parts to the question. One of it, what do you enjoy about your role about being a pastor's wife? Let's talk about that. And then the other part of it is, what are you most proud of your husband in the role that God's called him to? Wow, that feels like it feels very self-serving. Okay. Let's start with you, Lorraine.
Okay. I think one thing I enjoy or I really appreciate being a pastor's wife is the truth is that we have the power of influence. And when I look back, I've been a Sunday school teacher for years. I love working with children and young people. Yeah. And when I look back the years, I see some getting married now, and some have grown, have graduated from the universities. And I look back, there's this, I feel like a proud mama. I feel that there's this sense of influence. You see, there's something they have taken from you, and they have grown with it, and they living their life with it. I think that's something I enjoy in the work, that you have the power of influence. And I think one thing I'm proud about Joshua is
I'm going to record it.
Yeah, exactly.
That through it all, he's actually being first an amazing husband and father before he is a pastor. Yeah. I think when he was talking about how he protects us, I noticed that everywhere he goes to, there's always this thing. He always says that Christ says he would take care of his church, but that for him, he's taking care of his family.
That's the cool.
And I can't take that away from him. I think that has made me comfortable and to be able to pass through this journey. He has not only provided or protected, but to be honest, he has been a great husband and a great father to the children.
So part of there was actually a little bit of a method to my madness. Part of why I asked that question, I want to hear both of you clearly. Part of why I asked that question is because I think my hope and my encouragement to pastors' wives is that, and I think also for pastors, but every now and then, it really means a lot to each other if you remind your spouse. Because sometimes as pastors and pastors' wives, we're going through a lot and we don't get a chance to celebrate what God is doing in each of our lives. And so we're having this conversation as a model for what kinds of conversations you should have with your spouse, right? So whether it's pastors telling their wives to say, hey, I don't think I ever told you this. I appreciate this about you, or wives telling their husband. So that's some context. Tabitha, yes.
Well, for me, in serving, I think the background service that I offer is the one that I really enjoy most. And because it's private, but somehow it's going public.
That's
So
true. That's
so
true.
I think that one I enjoy most.
Okay.
And then for my husband,
Yeah.
I don't know how he does it, but the ability to like respond to situation, no matter how difficult they are. When you're asking him questions, it's like he has already read the script, and then he just give you the answer. So, and that is how he responds to almost every situation at home.
That's
And
awesome.
that makes him to be like more dear to me. I say, I'm proud of him. I told his mom one day, I said,
Google
see, he's not just preaching the word, but he's living it. He's living it.
Yeah.
The way he treats me
Yeah.
and the children. Wow.
Wow.
Thank you.
Oh, look at that. We should record this and give him a clip. That way you can, anytime he said it, just play this clip again. And I think that's so, one of the great things about this conversation, and I think why it's important, is because you as ladies get to see our lives outside of the pulpit, right? One of the hardest things, not hardest things, but if a man is living a different life from the pulpit on stage, and it creates a conflict in marriage. But that you guys can see your husbands on stage and backstage and say, he's consistent. That's amazing. That's amazing. Honey.
Okay, so
So what do you enjoy about the role of a pastor's wife?
I think I love watching from behind the scenes and seeing, what's going on, the changes that are happening in people's lives, whether it's via intercession or what. It's just amazing to stay behind the scenes and see that, okay, you know what, we're part of this ministry. We're part of what God is doing.
Yeah. You get a front row seat at what God's doing.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
Exactly. You get a front row seat of what God is doing.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And then the second question.
Really? You want me to ask it?
I,
What are you
What are you
feel so-
proud about?
Thank you, Joshua. I don't know how to ask my wife stuff. What am I great at, honey? What am I how do I even
all right. Well, I
most
think
proud of?
there's several, but one of them that stands out to me is the moment you decided we're coming to Nigeria. I know you had been praying along those lines, but we're thinking about, when we're older,
Yeah.
not now.
Our plan to come back tonight, we were in New Jersey for several years and we were like, we turned 75.
Yeah, when the kids are out and we have no,
kids, we'll come and serve God in Nigeria.
Yeah.
Apparently God's like, we're doing that 40 years earlier or 30 years earlier. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because to be honest, like you had a very good position at Grace and you had a good opportunity as, to step in as pastor as well.
Yeah.
And I think that moment where you were praying and because there were even times I was like, okay, well, let's just stay. And you're like, well, this is what God is saying and we're going to do. And I was like, okay, that's honorable.
That's cool.
Forgetting the fact that your security in income was going to be
significantly dropped. Yeah.
and God has provided, and God has been faithful, more than faithful since.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So that was a
There you go. All right, so we're gonna wrap this up shortly. I have two questions. I'm gonna end with one last question, which is general. But so, ladies, here, and I think this is for all of us. So the question is this: did you ever have a point where you felt like you hit a wall and you were ready to give up on ministry? Did you? And this is for all of us. I'll just have us go round. Did you have a point where you felt like you were ready to give up? So if you got, for the guys, where you wanted to quit ministry, you're done. For the ladies, where you're like, he needs to quit. We're done. Like, I'm not going. Did you ever have that? And how did you work? Because clearly you're still serving in some context here. So
sure. Yep.
how did you work through that? So I'm going to have you guys give me short. So I'm going to start this way. Go to Pastor Joshua.
Yeah.
Or I have both of you interact together. How
Yeah,
about
so
that?
maybe we will speak as a couple.
Okay.
So for me, yes. I mean, there was this time that I just feel it's enough.
Sure.
Like I need to drop the towel as per being a local church pastor.
Okay, yes.
So I felt I needed to just break
Sure.
from being a local church pastor. But from ministry, nah.
I don't need the details. So you did have that
Oh,
experience.
sure.
But you kept pressing on. What kept you pressing on? Is that correct? What kept you?
I think it's the passion and the fact that look, it's a calling upon me and I can't run away from it.
Sure.
The passion is still there. The burning fire is still in there.
Sure.
That kept me going.
Okay.
And I know that look, one day God is going to hold me responsible for this particular calling. So I just need to keep going.
Sure.
And I feel ministry has a very wide platform.
Sure. Doesn't that always have to be in the church building?
Very
it can be
good.
outside of the context of church building. Okay.
Outside,
Sati, Fubra, do you have anything to add to
so
that? Or
Sati.
yeah, you were Sati. Yeah, the Sati corner. Yeah.
True. I think at that point of his life, I think he needed to step back a little bit because his mental health was important and the children were important. Because even the time that all these things were happening, I noticed that the children never knew or had an idea that anything. I think the people who protected mostly were our children.
Wow, sure.
They never knew anything,
Yeah.
was actually going on.
Yeah.
And I think there's something I always tell. I said, if God is sending us to the fire, I remember when we posted to Sokoto at a point. Ultimately, if it's God that's sending us, let's go. Because if we don't go, we don't know the consequences. So we feel if it's God, let's go. If it's God, let's go. So pray about it. If it's God, let's go.
So that internal sense of calling is kind of what kept you going, even when the circumstances. Okay,
True.
so we hold on.
Yeah,
Okay,
true.
that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. All right, let's come to the Guruza corner.
Yes. I think I've sensed God's calling upon my life quite early. Way back before I was 10. And
Wow, before 10.
oh yeah, my
my.
father was a pastor, but I was his seventh child. So no one would think of those from the back to even be anything. But out of 8 boys,
Wow.
almost all of us never wanted, at some point, youthful exuberance came up and we all wanted to be every other thing. But not the
But
pastor.
a pastor, yeah.
More so that pastors of that generation, the children would not love to be pastors if we will go by what the parents experience, what they experience as pastors' children and all that. But I think in the long run, I realized that I was made for this. I have never found any time I wanted to throw in the towel.
Wow. That's awesome.
We've had challenges.
Yeah.
And I remember sometimes my wife will say, okay, with all of these issues coming up, I wonder, you just go to sleep as if nothing is happening.
Yeah.
I will say, girl, I was made for this. And as long as I look at those issues and I see that I have been on track all along, I go to sleep.
Wow.
Nothing disturbs me.
Yeah.
Wake up the next day and continue. And like I said earlier,
You're cut from a different cloth. that is, I love that, man. That is amazing. Yeah.
so I like I said earlier, whatever issue is there, I make sure it is resolved. In fact, not even in ministry alone. Even along friends' lines. When we have issues, we must resolve them. Because if we can't resolve them, we can't move forward together. So that is one way God has helped me to move on in the ministry. I don't want to be extremely spiritual to say, oh, it's all been God's grace. We all know it's been God's grace. In every sphere of whatever we do in ministry, it's been God's grace. But I think one of the things that God has given me to keep me moving on is the wife that He's blessed me with. I know times that in my sleep, she covers us all in the house with prayers.
Wow. That's amazing.
Going room after room, praying over everyone.
That's awesome.
Coming over me and praying God's grace in my life. Sometimes I have heard that happen, but most of the time I don't know. She prays over everything that is around me. The computer I use, the phones I use, everything.
Wow. That's
So
awesome.
I know that I have a very, very strong person that is equally convinced that we're in this together. Even though sometimes we have low moments, no one doesn't have
Of course,
that. But when you are walking that path together with a very strong partner and friend and a spouse, then you are strengthened.
That's awesome. Yeah. So it's interesting. Part of what if I could, and I want to hear it from you also too. Part of what, so he talked about that internal sense of calling for both of them. For you talked about first of all was just that sense that you're built for this, but secondly also, which is we don't think about, it's like she's part of the reason why you stayed the course. That's awesome. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'm coming from a different perspective. Mine is just illness. It's like I kept falling sick. And you go to the hospital, they will tell you there's nothing wrong with you, and you know you are sick. And so I reached a point that it's like I'm adding to the responsibilities. So when you go out there, I wish he would come back home and find me strong and healthy to provide all he needs. But most of the time he will find me lying down and then he will start taking care of me again. So it's like, God, if you truly call us into this ministry, heal me, heal me. And then there was a moment that my husband said something. He said, Tabitha, you see this thing that is happening to you? It's like an arrow that was thrown to me, but you've taken it.
You absorbed it.
Yeah. So I was like, what did you say? He repeated it and I busted into cry. I said, if this is meant for you, with this goal that God has given you in life, please let it keep coming to me. So it's like, I just want to continue to be the person that will take it. So that is helping me. And the children that we have, they are wonderful. They will keep saying, Mommy, you are meant for this. You are a counselor. You are meant for this. And truly, it's good. God is helping us.
I have to say, as one of your congregation members, even though I haven't come to church in the last 2 weeks,
That's okay.
traveling. But as your congregation member, I can absolutely affirm you are built for this. I mean, it's just, I've been to churches around, and when I sit under your teaching and under your leadership, when I talk to Tabitha just about ministry, like I feel like it gives me pride to call you my pastor. So I affirm that you're made for this. So that's awesome.
Great.
Okay. Honey Pie, is there a moment where you felt like you hit a wall and you're like, yeah, I'm not doing this, or I want to give up on this? And how did we come through that?
I think the only time I really felt like that was when I was sick as well. And I couldn't take care of the kids, but then you would do all the running around back and forth.
It's a tough season.
To church, and used to go for Sunday night services and come back, and I'm like, all right, I'm still lying on the bed.
Yeah.
But that was a very tough season for us. And for me, it was more like, you know what, Lord, just check me out and let him continue what he's doing. Because, but I thank God that, you know, I think the way he brought us through it was, you were that pillar of strength that I needed. There were times that, you know, I saw you pray over me so many times. I saw you, you know, fast and intercede on my behalf so many times. And I remember you saying that, you know, if this is a cross God has given you to bear, you'll bear it with all your heart. And I was like, well, okay.
That was a tough season. You know what's funny? That was not the tough season for me. The tough season was after we had come to Nigeria to plant a church. And we got to Nigeria, and our entire church planting team had gone back to the U.S. And I was like, I just sold everything, moved to Africa, and I don't have a plan. You know, and I was just lost. And I just remember thinking, like, did I not hear God? And I was, you know, and I remember, I don't know if it was I wanted to quit or I just wanted Jesus to come back. I'm not sure. I guess it's the same thing. Wanting to quit. I'm like,
It's the same thing.
and the way we got through it was, it was prayer, and it was a lot of it. I think a lot of it was my wife coming. You know, so I had a season where I was caring for her, and I was spiritually strong. And I think in that season, she was just like, "Babe, we've sold everything. Like you know, there's this." I forget which army it was, but they wanted to. I forget what nation they wanted to invade, but the army came on board, and the captain said, "Burn all the ships." And because they burned all the ships, they're like, "We have to fight and take this land because we're not going back home." And I feel like Duke was like, "Well, we've burnt the ships, so we're here." And it was through that season we began to discern, maybe God began to show us that I used that to bring you here. Now let me show you why I really brought you to Nigeria. And he began to lead us to pastors, and that led to the birthing of our ministry. So this conversation has been great. So ladies, I'm going to end with you because I started with you. I would like for you to share. So now we're talking to the female wives pastors, pastors' wives, right? So ladies, actually I want to get from the men and the women, but let's start with the ladies. Ladies, what is one word of hope? What's one word of encouragement that you would give to any pastor's wife listening? Okay. And then pastors, guys, could you give us one word of hope? What would you say to a pastor listening, younger pastor, older pastor, in light of his wife? What advice would you give him toward his wife? Does that make sense? How can he better love her, serve her? What is one thing you would say? So let's go with the ladies, and then we'll go with the guys, and then we'll wrap up, okay? So let's start with you, Fubere.
Okay, we'll be God is the one who's taking you through the process. He's the one who will guide us through the end of the process. So keep holding on and just keep on going.
I love that. I should print that on a t-shirt. Yeah, Tabitha.
You are unique and you have a unique purpose, ladies.
Amen.
I love you all.
Amen, honey.
Yeah, you're enough. You're more than enough. Whether you are serving as a calling or whether you're in the office of a pastor's wife or a pastor, you are more than enough to do what God has called you to do.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Joshua.
Well, for me, I would say be more mindful about protecting your wife from yourself.
Yeah.
And
From yourself.
Yeah, from yourself.
That's a
you
whole
know.
podcast
Yeah,
episode.
so more like always, don't allow things that, don't transfer any,
Aggression. Yeah.
aggression to,
Yeah.
to your wife.
That's good.
As much as you protect her from others.
Sure. Protect her from others and yourself. That's good.
Yeah.
Reverend Guruza.
The role of the husband in the life of his wife is something that I will encourage pastors to learn from Jesus. We should lead our wives like Jesus is leading the church.
Yeah.
And scripture says, Lord, sanctify us with your word. Your word is true. So sanctify your wives with God's word.
That's good.
Through the word of God, you can provide purposeful leadership.
That's
And
good.
it is true that your wife can follow you as the church follows Jesus. That is the pattern we have in the scripture. You go with that, you have a successful home, you have a successful ministry.
I love that. I love that. I would end by saying something a lot simpler. I would say, pastors, take your wives on a date. Honestly, like just make time in your week. And I always say, take your wife out to something that she enjoys doing.
Yeah.
But right, like most of us want to take her to what we like, but because my wife and I always joke, I love to take her to the movies, but I like action movies with explosions. My wife does not like that. She wants drama, and I'm like, so even when we watch TV, she's like, let's watch a movie. I'm like, ooh, let's watch Lord of the Rings. She's like, can we watch something that you're not killing people? And so take your wives out somewhere special, but do something that she wants to do and continue to love the wife of your youth. So,
Amen.
gentlemen, ladies, thank you so much for this time. This was so
Thank
rewarding.
you for having us here.
Such a joy, such a joy. And thank you all for listening and for watching. As always, if this was a blessing to you, please share this podcast on your social media platform. Let others know about this. And thank you so much again for joining us for the Nigerian Pastors Podcast. God bless you. Thank you guys, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Blessings.
God bless you.